Alright, so today I wanted to make a video on critical race theory, and I have the Wikipedia page of it pulled up here, so let's read a little bit about it and then we'll talk about it. Um, Critical race theory is a theoretical framework in the social sciences that examines society and culture as they relate to categories of race, law, and power. Developed out of postmodern philosophy, it is based on critical theory, a social philosophy that argues that social problems are influenced and created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than individual and psychological factors. Began as a theoretical movement within American law schools in the mid to late 1980s as a reworking of critical legal studies on race issues, and is loosely unified by two common themes. Firstly, it proposes that white supremacy and racial power are maintained over time, and in particular, the law may play a role in this process. That's the most important part of it. But secondly, critical race theory work has investigated the possibility of transforming the relationship between law and racial power, as well as pursuing a project of achieving racial emancipation and anti subordination more badly. Now, again, they kind of describe it in a somewhat vague point. One of the main aspects of critical race theory is that if white people come up with an idea, it is inherently racist. If white people are running things, it is inherently, um, it is racist, right? Like no ifs, ands, or buts. And that is the problem, that it is in and of itself a racist ideology. And the bigger problem too is this is being pushed on people. There's already school boards, universities that have this as their official policy. Like a lot of people, you talk to the average person about this, and they look at you like you're crazy, like you're some crazy conspiracy theorist. But no, this is reality. There is school boards that are adopting this. There's universities that are adopting this. Not to mention too, they've been doing it for a long time, many of them. It's just been pushed harder and harder recently because of an increasingly push to the left. Um, and it's becoming a little bit more out in the open. That's the thing when it comes to a lot of these leftist causes, is that they start out kind of in the shadows, and then they slowly, reveal their hand, if you know what I mean. But again, the big point of critical race theory is that it is very, the people that are the biggest proponents of it are very open in saying that if white people built something, if white people created a system, it is inherently racist, or in other words, it is the equivalent of original sin. If anything, it's worse, right? So this is the problem. And here's the biggest problem with this too, is that like I always mention when it comes to these kind of people, is that they will never admit they're wrong. They will never admit they're wrong, and because of that, um, they will continue to push further and further. Like a lot of people hear this and like, oh, it's not that bad, even though it is, because by definition it's a blatantly racist ideology. But again, even if you want to argue that it's not that bad, these kind of policies and these kind of people, they never admit they're wrong. They never take a step back and be like, hey, I was wrong. We pushed things a little too far. We got a little out of hand. No, that never ever happens. It is always, we didn't go far enough. And here's the big problem with this, is that unless enough people stand up to this, we're going to end up with, I don't even want to guess. And the things that are possibilities is, civil war, race war, gulags. Like seriously, nothing is out of the realm of possibilities here. And again, the more apolitical people hear that, and they think you're crazy. But again, if you'd have told these people the same thing that's going on now, the things that are going on now, 5, 10 years ago, they would have thought you're crazy, and here we are. So again, nothing is out of the realm of possibilities, unless you're suggesting, like, the only things that are the crazy things are like, even aliens aren't crazy at this point. But again, like, there's only a small number of things that are out of the realm of possibilities, I guess, is the point being. But getting back to the main point here, um, this is where we're headed as a society. Again, like it or not, unless enough people stand up to this, this is where we're headed. And if you are white, or you believe in a colorblind society, which should be the vast majority of people, right? but it isn't, because the most racist races are not whites. Whites are actually the least from the numbers I've seen. But again, that's the other big problem too, is that you have a lot of these quote unquote minorities, because again, a lot of these quote unquote minorities aren't going to be minorities very soon. This is the other thing too, like when whites become a minority, like are we going to get, affirmative action and diversity programs? Like I'd really like to know that. The problem is we're not, right? Like we're not. All these diversity programs and whatnot, they're only good when it takes away from whites and helps, usually the black and brown people, for lack of a better way of putting it, I guess, or putting it in a nutshell. But yeah, that's the problem. And here, I mean, here's what should be happening too, is that this garbage shouldn't be promoted. I mean, this is the problem with society nowadays too, is that the only actual empirically racist things that go on these days, they hurt whites almost exclusively, and I mean Asians as well, and they benefit blacks and basically anyone other than whites and Asians. And when you look at it from, and a lot of people would scoff at that, but when you look at the actual laws that are on the books, or actual things that we can definitively show benefit or hurt one race or the other, they're all ones that benefit blacks. I mean, you look at these diversity programs. Well, do they benefit whites? No, they hurt whites, because, I mean, you take the whole college admissions thing. If you're an Asian getting into, especially these more major universities, you need to score significantly higher than the average black to get in. Same goes for whites, not to quite the same extent. When it comes to hiring policies, um, is there any jobs out there that say no, whites only? No, they would get sued into oblivion. But there's plenty of jobs that they're hiring just for minorities, or just based off the fact that they ask you if you're a minority in the job description. You can kind of understand what they're getting at. If you're a white man, you might as well not even apply. Like, let's just be honest. I mean, you look at like rentals, rental properties and stuff like that. If you go on Kijiji and look around at these things, you will see plenty of these postings that say, Indian only, Arab only, black only, female only, but you will never, at least I've never seen, and I've looked through that probably thousands of these ads, and you will never see, I've never seen a one that says especially whites only, or even men only. But I mean, especially whites only. I've never seen any of those. But yeah, like I said, you constantly see female only, or female, Indian, or female, black female, or something along those lines, right? Like you constantly see that stuff, because again, society is okay with discrimination as long as it hurts whites and or men, right? That's the problem too. I mean, you look at the male aspect of that too. I've made many videos about that, so I'm not even going to get into it. But if you look at the actual numbers, the discrimination that benefits women is far greater than the discrimination that goes against blacks too. I mean, the vast majority of empirical evidence that these kind of people point to that proves the quote unquote black oppression or minority oppression narrative, it's almost exclusively either straight up hoaxes or just blindly made up, or at the very least it's exaggerated, right? Like they'll point to, oh, blacks are in prison more than their percent of the population. Well, like I say, that doesn't mean anything, because again, the only thing that matters is their likelihood of committing crime, right? Because men are in prison a lot more than their percent of the population. Does that mean that they're discriminated against? Well, the reality is actually yes, men are discriminated against when it comes to sentencing, but that doesn't make up for nearly the gap, right? Like everybody knows that men are more likely to commit crimes. That's why they're in prison more. And I mean, the same thing goes for that kind of stuff as well. So again, the problem when it comes to this kind of stuff is there needs to be empirical things to point at, I guess is what I'm getting at. But back to the main point, to sum it up here, critical race theory is an absolutely insane ideology, and the fact that it's getting pushed is That's where society is headed to. And I don't know how people can look at you with a straight face and be like, "Yep, an ideology that says that one race of people is inherently racist, and by default, other races can't be racist against said race," is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And the big problem when it comes to this is the majority of people, I don't think, agree with this. The problem is that um, of that majority, the vast majority of them are afraid to speak up. And why is that? Because they don't want to be called racist, usually. And I mean, there's other things that go. You risk losing friends. You risk getting fired from your job, and that's the worst part of this kind of thing is that people can't speak up. Like that's the worst part because again, the cancel culture really only exists on one side of the spectrum, and it's a terrible thing. But again, at the very least, people need to be speaking up about this kind of stuff. So, anyway, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Um, Make sure you follow me on mainly Twitter, that's the big one, but also BitChute and Parler. Those links are in the description, so you can find them all there. But like I say, make sure you hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms. It's very important. So, anyway, stay tuned for more.